I had this friend in high school who he wanted to drink in his parents' basement. I was like, "Oh, are you having a party?" And he's like, "No." I was like, "Oh, just a couple of friends." He's like, "No, it's going to be just me." And I was like, that's the saddest thing I've ever heard. Like,
I know, that's the starting of alcoholism right there.
I think it is. And he may have went that direction. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll have to look him up on Facebook.
It's going to be in my basement drinking. All right, so let's jump into this thing here. Let's talk about alcohol versus no alcohol. This comes from James Hasty. He's a guy, he's a member on the Wolf and Iron community. And James basically says, let's talk about, when to drink, when not to drink. And he also throws in the questions of, you could kind of use the same logic, or maybe for when to smoke, both anything from tobacco to weed, or when not to, and how to kind of make those decisions and make those kind of navigate that world. And then the other question that we're going to tackle later on is going to be how to deal with unemployment. So you know something about this, right?
I know a lot about this.
So this is going to be good. I've only been unemployed for a little while, and that was when I was younger. But we'll tackle that later. And but just how to kind of deal with unemployment, what kind of things, how does it affect you as a man, and kind of how to get your feet back under you, and that kind of stuff. So interesting episode, and these things can go together. If you do too much alcohol, you can find yourself unemployed. So
if you're unemployed, you'll probably drink more.
That's true. Yeah. So, all right. So, not a real big setup here on the question, other than just, when should a man drink? When should a man not drink? And this is particularly a sensitive subject to me because as of the recording of this episode, it's been just about a week since my dad died. And I got the call that I'd been expecting to get basically my whole life as a kid, even into adulthood, that my dad was in a bad way. I'd always assumed that he would fall down, hurt himself, start bleeding or something like that, bleed to death, or get in a car accident or something terrible. But I always knew that I was going to get the call. And
did you always feel like alcohol was going to be involved?
Yeah. My dad's been an alcoholic all of his adult life. And, guys, just to be honest, he was drinking 3 to 4 quarts a day.
Quarts of what?
Of beer, which...
You really aren't a drinker. You don't measure beer in quarts.
What does beer come in?
I mean, you can get, are you talking about a 40?
I don't know. What is a quart?
A quart is 48 ounces.
Okay. So I'm just talking, this is what I've been told. Yeah, I'm not a drinker. But
clearly.
But you can't buy beer in a quart?
You buy oil in quarts.
But what if you buy beer in cans and then drink enough of them? Is that considered
I mean, technically, yes. You could get a quart of beer out of several cans, but it usually comes in a 12-ounce can or bottle, and or if you're in a bad way, you buy 40s.
Okay.
4 O's.
But is a 40 not beer?
It is. It's just 40 ounces of beer.
But because it's not an extra 8 ounces, it's not considered a quart?
No, it's called a 40.
Okay.
Straight up.
All right. Well, from what I was told,
your street cred is in the basement right now.
Oh, it is. No, big time. Yeah, I don't drink, and so we'll have that out, and for obvious reasons, which you guys will understand.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
I don't drink, so I've stayed away from it, and I've tried alcohol in various forms. People have tried to give me like tequila and vodka and stuff like that, and just to kind of taste it, and you can't really.
Tequila is terrible. It's like drinking gasoline.
Yeah, vodka actually was okay because I couldn't really taste it. Put it with some orange juice.
Vodka's dangerous.
That was all right, but the other stuff. Got no taste for it and no desire to drink it, but we'll kind of get into why. But anyhow, my dad's dead, and
it's rather abrupt.
Yeah, well, that's just the situation.
Yeah.
And he was drinking a lot. You could say alcohol is what I've always heard, but I don't know if it was beers or whatever.
Yeah.
But you guys can write in and say if it's not possible to drink a quart of beer or whatever. But the point is, he was drinking a massive amount of something.
Yeah.
Okay. And really,
and how many quarts did you say?
3 to 4.
That's a gallon of beer. That's a lot of beer.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And so anyhow, he's just going through it like crazy. And he got to the point where he couldn't drink anymore. And so his body kind of forced him to be off of it. And ended up,
Was it cirrhosis that got him, or?
At the end of the day, it was everything. Internal bleeding, kidneys shutting down, the liver had a big mass on it of something. Don't know.
Wow.
Could have been cirrhosis, could have been cancer.
How old was he?
63. he looked to be about 85.
Yeah, that's rough.
So this is fresh for me, and I'm coming at this from the perspective of a kid growing up with a dad who was an alcoholic, and growing up also with a lot of other adults that I knew who drank quite a bit. So whether they're alcoholics or not, they're still oftentimes, a little tipsy and stuff like that. So this idea of when to drink, when not to drink, I'm just going to come out and say, if you've got a history of alcoholism in your family, don't be an idiot. Don't drink. I mean, if you've got alcoholism on both sides of your family like I do, it just doesn't make sense to even go down that road, because you could say there's a genetic predisposition to it. I think you could say that there's, environmental kind of factors that play into that as well. Obviously, shame goes into a lot of what fuels alcoholism and things of that nature, and it's sort of a cycle there. But as far as alcohol itself, I would say you got to make that evaluation. What kind of impact have I seen in this in my lineage, and is it something that should be avoided? And so that's the situation that I'm in right now. But I'll hand it over to you, Brandon, and kind of give your
well, it's kind of like a know thyself situation, right? Can you handle it or can you not? Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the age when those determinations should be made is very young. And if you're anything like me when I was a kid, you don't have it all together when you're a kid. And I didn't make those determinations, and to be honest with you, I got lucky. I am lucky that I am not an alcoholic, because I used to drink a lot, like a whole lot. My dad died when I was 18, and my mom moved to North Carolina when I was 20, 21 maybe, mm-hmm. and left us a house, me and my brother. My brother was 15 or 16 years old, still in high school. My brother was my designated driver on Monday nights, and then had to get up and go to high school on Tuesday. So we had plenty of an opportunity to get addicted, get hooked, and we didn't have any moral reason not to, because neither of us were, believers in Christ. So alcohol is a very dangerous thing, and this is such an appropriate time for me to be discussing this, because there's actually something going on in my family where I've got several ladies, ironically, who struggle with alcoholism. And I've got an aunt who is actually seeking treatment right now for alcoholism. And anytime you come to a family gathering around my family, there's always alcohol involved. And she is there struggling with this, fighting this battle, and there's always alcohol around. And I'm like, and me and my wife were talking about this, like, is that right?
Sure.
And biblically speaking, it says, and I suck at recalling scripture, but I know it's in the Bible somewhere, test me, brah, it's in there. If you are in a group of believers and one person struggles with something, then everyone in that group should abstain from partaking in what that one person struggles with.
Sure.
And that just logically makes sense to me. I'm kind of chubby.
Yeah. And
if I come over to your house and there's cake every time I come over here, like, that's a struggle for me. I'm going to eat the cake and get fatter. So that just makes sense.
So I can't ever have cake in my house?
I didn't say that, dude.
Okay.
I didn't say that. I like cake. Okay. I was just saying, like, if I was choosing to fight the battle of gluttony.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But at this point, actually, I am trying.
You're not going to find a lot of cake in my house anyhow, so you're good.
Well, yeah, you're all celiac, sickly people.
Yeah. So, okay, so you got that on your side of the family. Now, does alcoholism, does it seem to just show up in pieces, or does it run like a river through your family lineage?
It doesn't seem to. I've had uncles here and there, but it's not like a consistent, like, I've got one uncle who married into my family. He married one of my aunts, and there's a ton of alcohol abuse among every man, every woman in the family.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that, too, tends to be environmental. Like, they live near where I grew up, and it's a really, like, just crappy place. Like, I'm a big believer that the weather affects the way that people do things.
Yeah.
And, like, if it's cloudy and dreary all day, every day, I think that has an effect on human beings. I think that, I don't think you have to give into that, but it definitely has an effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So that's your side of the things, and I think we're kind of in agreement. Know thyself absolutely is right. I'm not saying don't drink at all.
Yeah.
But I would say, how do you give me your ideas on how do you test the waters on that? So like, let's say somebody's, they're 18, they're going out for a drink even though they shouldn't be, but it happens obviously. Or maybe they wait till they're 21, they're finally in college and they're kind of doing their thing.
Dude, I drank so much more before I was 21 than I ever did after I was 21.
Well,
it wasn't as fun.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's what I hear, actually. And obviously, people are going to drink at some point.
It's human nature. I felt like I was getting away with something. That's the greatest feeling in the world when you're a raging atheist.
You're not supposed to.
At war with God, trying to take on the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved getting away with something, man.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah.
So, but I drink now. I mean, if I'm out in the yard working, splitting firewood, whatever, like, I like to drink a beer, 2, 3, but you have to know, like, when's it getting out of control.
Yeah.
So I actually, a couple months ago, I was just getting started in business, and I had like a really killer week. Like it was the first week I made money, and I was super excited and in a really good mood. And I had all these logs in my front yard that this tree cutter came and dropped off for me.
Nice.
And I was like, I'm going to go split some firewood, get them cut up, get them hauled. And I was like, I've never really drank wine. Maybe I'll grab a bottle of wine just to see what that's like.
Yeah.
And I got this bottle of wine, and it was a double bottle. It wasn't 750 milliliters. It was 1,500 milliliters.
Okay.
And for some reason, I'm 36, almost 37 years old. I didn't realize there's more alcohol in wine than there is in beer. So I kind of just drank it like beer. And, things were flowing, the logs were flying, and just...
Well, so you're splitting wood out here while you're doing this.
I'm split. Well, it got to... I'll be straight up with you. It got to a point where I could no longer split wood safely, and things spiraled quickly, and just... It was a lack of experience combined with my own stupidity, but I was literally like chugging this... Well, not chugging, but drinking
from the bottle.
No, I wasn't drinking from the bottle. I actually had a wine glass, which wound up getting broken, but that's another story. But I was drinking this wine. Like, you have to know what you're consuming as well. So I actually wound up, losing my lunch on that one. And just, and my wife was so pissed. And just, I didn't really, it's not like I went in there and beat her or anything like that, but I was acting like an idiot. And I was, like you said earlier, I was out of control. Like, I was no longer in control of what I was doing, what was coming out of my mouth. And that's not a good place to be. Like, I'm not an anti-alcohol guy, but that was a lesson for me. Like, there's more alcohol in wine than there is beer, and I had no idea.
Yeah.
I used to be a cop, and I didn't know that.
Wow.
That's sad.
Yeah. I think that's actually one of the things that they tell you, like, a glass of wine equals however much, and then,
Yeah, I've got no idea how I made it through the police academy. I mean, let's be honest. You don't got to be that intelligent to be a police officer. No offense. I mean, there's a lot of really intelligent guys doing the job, but there's also, it's got its knuckle draggers like any other profession.
Good-natured, good-hearted guys out there as well.
Yeah.
Like yourself.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine, though. I mean, that's good, though. At least you're able to recall the amount of milliliters, which apparently is important in alcohol world, like all these ounces and cups and units of measurement. It's like, this is ridiculous. This is another reason that I wouldn't do alcohol.
Don't you wish the whole world would just get on the metric system and be done with it?
And that would be nice. Yeah, it'd be a lot easier.
How many feet do you want to put in a mile? 5,280 sounds like a good number. It's so stupid. What were we thinking?
I don't know. We just want to be different. But nobody orders a cup of coffee and is like, can I have, 8 ounces exactly, please?
Well, coffee's got free refills. Who cares?
Well, that's true.
Beer doesn't have free refills. If it did, we'd have a much bigger problem with alcoholism, present company included.
So you actually brought up something that I thought was really good. So you said that you had a really good week or a good sale or something like that, right?
Yeah. I was celebrating.
I wasn't. Yeah, you're celebrating. So here's how I've heard addiction, kind of signs of addiction, that alcohol has taken a place, or whatever it could be. It could be sweets.
Are you about to diagnose me, bro?
I'm about to do something here.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'm not an expert in this, obviously, but people who have talked to me about alcoholism, because my dad's an alcoholic, have kind of explained what addiction sort of looks like or how it kind of shows up in life. And this could be anything. It doesn't have to be alcohol. It could be pornography. It could be sweets. It could be whatever. It's the guy goes to work. He has an awesome week. He knocks out the sales out of the park like you did. And he's like, man, before I go home, I'm going to stop by the bar, or I'm going to pick up a drink, and I'm going to have a drink to celebrate, right?
Yeah.
Because in order to kind of complete this thing to celebrate, this is what I need. I need some alcohol or sweets or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
It's a reward for themselves. Actually, the same thing happens though. But the guy has a terrible week. He doesn't do very well. He's feeling terrible. He's putting in a lot of hours, but he's not making the sales, and it's just going south. And so what does he do? He says,
screw it, I'm going to get loaded.
I'm going to get loaded. I'm going to pick up something. This is going to make me feel better. It's sort of like a reward for the hard week I've had, or it's a consolation prize or something like that, whatever you want to call it. But basically, it shows up on both ends of the spectrum. And, that in itself is not necessarily a bad thing. It's the degree to which he takes it, after that. So it'd be like me saying, I want to have a piece of cake. We'll go back to your analogy.
Yeah.
I want to have some cake. Or a cupcake or whatever to celebrate, whatever great week, or, had a tough week and want to have a cupcake. Not the worst thing in the world, but it's, if I do this every time at every turn of event in life, I'm always, this guy is here for comforting me, whether it's alcohol or whatever it is.
Well, it's an escape from reality.
It can be. Yeah.
Alcohol, drugs, whatever is an escape from reality. And alcohol is one of those things I think it's a little easier to moderate how much of an escape you get.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about for a second then, since you're the expert on alcohol, and I'm obviously not. I know not all alcohols are the same, right?
Correct.
So one of the things, I was reading a book on Guinness by Stephen Mansfield. And it was
Guinness beer?
Yeah, Guinness beer.
Okay.
Yeah. Is it a beer or is it a stout?
It's a stout beer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you just making words up now?
No, there's different kinds of beers like porter and IPA and stout. And
because people are going to listen to this, and if you're not absolutely right about there's a difference between
I'm
beer
sure
and
we'll
stout.
get nitpicked. I mean, look at the hipsters with their craft beers, which I love. Like, I'm a craft beer guy now. Yeah. Like, I won't buy anything that I've seen a commercial for on TV because there's just so many better options out there. But anyhow, I'm sorry.
Okay. No, you're derailing.
No offense to the hipsters.
That's okay.
Maybe a little bit of offense to the hipsters.
Yeah, hipsters are okay. They just,
I know you got a big audience. There's probably a couple hipsters in there.
They're out there. But like Guinness is filling, right? In comparison to just chugging beers all day.
I think it's got more alcohol in it. Plus, it just kind of sits in your stomach like a brick.
Yeah.
I've never actually drank an entire Guinness before.
Yeah, so this is where I've heard, and so one of the reasons that I heard that Guinness was actually developed back in the day was because there was so much of this cheap alcohol that was basically leading towards I forget what the actual type of alcohol, guys. I'm sorry for this. We didn't prepare for this at all. By the way, Brandon just showed up, and I was like, "What are two good questions that we could find on the site?"
Yeah.
But we're
doing pretty good considering.
It's going pretty well. But there's a lot of alcoholism going on, and they said if we introduce Guinness, it actually has vitamins, it has minerals and stuff like that. And
what? It's a health beer?
It's a health beer, yeah. Yeah. And
I had no idea.
But also because of just the way it works, because it's so heavy, you don't drink a lot of it. You drink some Guinness, you go home with your family, and life is good, right?
Yes.
You're not just downing it and just flowing through you. So that's my understanding that not all alcohols are the same. So I guess again, you got to think about when you're thinking about moderation. And kind of knowing yourself, you got to know something about what you're drinking and kind of what its purpose is. Are you there for the flavor and for the enjoyment, or are you there to get lit?
I mean, can we be honest?
All right.
You drink Kool-Aid for the flavor. People don't start drinking alcohol. It's an acquired taste. I still remember when I drank my first beer. Mm-hmm. Me and my cousin were camping, a big family camp out. We had a hunting camp up in on the Allegheny River in the Allegheny National Forest in Pennsylvania. And, like, we broke into my uncle's tent and stole Milwaukee's Best, warm Milwaukee's Best, and it was in his sleeping bag. We each stole one. And we swam across the river to this island, far side of the island where no parents could see us, and we cracked these beers, and we're drinking them. And it was the worst experience of my life. Like,
it tasted terrible.
It was warm Milwaukee's Best. I know you're not a beer guy, but the beer guys are out there thinking, "Oh my God, that's horrible." Like, Milwaukee's Best is just. I've never met anybody said, "Oh, I think we'll have a Milwaukee's Best today." Like, it's just kind of like, "Oh, I'm broke and I want to get drunk. What am I going to buy? Oh, Milwaukee's Best." So it's one of them things where it's definitely no. I don't know anybody that the first time they drank a beer has said, "Oh man, that's good."
Yeah,
and I don't know. Now I like beer. I like liver mush now. I used to hate liver mush. So it's just kind of like you acquire these tastes, and is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I don't know.
Well, I mean, so you actually, when you drink a beer, you're like, this is good.
Depends on the beer.
Okay, but that does happen. That's an experience. It's not just like, I want to drink a beer.
Yes.
I just gotta suffer
if
through
I drink a Catawba Brewing Company White Zombie, I'm like, man, this is good.
Yeah.
If I drink Appalachian Mountain Brewery Boone Creek Blonde, I'm like, man, this is good.
See, I always assume that when people say they enjoy the taste of beer, I think that they mean it like in comparison to just straight alcohol, rubbing alcohol. Like in comparison to rubbing alcohol, this beer is good. But on a scale of like actual tasty, this is not actually good at all. That's how I would assume it, because I've never had a beer that I thought, oh, this is something I would want to do.
Yeah, like the worst thing I've ever drank straight is Bacardi 151. It's 151 proof, which it's, almost pure alcohol. And like I drank that straight and it was horrible. It was like drinking gasoline.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, any beer is better than that. But I don't know. I genuinely, I think if there was, let me think about this. If there was no alcohol in those two beers, would I still drink them? And that's kind of like the hard issue right there, isn't it? Like, would I still drink those beers if there was no alcohol? And I think I probably wouldn't pay as much money for them, but I think I would still drink them.
Yeah. So, I mean, if it came out tasting the exact same,
Yeah.
but there was no alcohol, no buzz associated with
Yes.
it. Yeah. You'd still drink it.
Yes.
But it would have never become a social thing, right?
No,
It's like,
because I look
loosen
at
you up.
alcohol as, for me, it's like a social lubricant. Because as we've discussed
terrible,
before,
by the way.
No, lubricants are things that make things work better. So alcohol makes social interactions work better for me. And then if I drink too much, it makes them work much worse for me. So you got to know where your cutoff is. But as we've discussed, I am naturally inclined towards being an introvert.
Yeah.
And I can remember going to like dance clubs in Pittsburgh and when I was in college, and whether or not I was the DD, having the time of my life or having the worst time imaginable and counting the seconds until it was time to go. Like that's the flip side.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man, it's a tough one. Jesus made wine in the Bible. So I don't think it's like a black and white, this is terrible, you should never do this type of thing. But it all comes back to know thyself. Where's your heart? What's the purpose of this? Why do you need this?
Yeah.
So it's a tough one, though, because you have to, I've got my line in the sand, and this is going to sound like some weak sauce to a lot of guys. My line in the sand is I don't want to have more than 2 or 3 beers at a time. And contrary,
because past that, you're starting to feel it, and you're not yourself.
Yeah, I'm a super cheap date now. I don't drink that much anymore. Let me think. There actually is beer at my house right now, but I think I bought a 12-pack of Rolling Rock, and it's been there for a long time. Rolling Rock is really cheap. I had no idea. It's a very flavorless but decent cheap beer.
Yeah.
Are we getting paid for these plugs? I've given 3 so far.
I know. No, not really. I don't know. I'm not sure we get much money for this. It's like, drink beer, but don't.
The rambling plugs of idiots. I mean, drink beer. Girls in bikinis are going to show up. It's going to be awesome. You'll instantly have a pool. It'll be summer again.
So let me talk about this from a perspective of as a kid. So let's say, there's the perspective of you as the adult having a good time with some other friends and hanging out, by the fire pit or whatever.
Yeah.
But then there's also the perspective of your kids and how they see that. So I remember, I don't remember my dad. Well, it's hard for me to remember a time when my dad was really sober. There was one time when he called me on the phone when he was actually in a rehab facility, and he gave me a big apology and stuff like that, which meant the world to me. I thought he was going to turn around things for real, but it was the soberest I ever heard him and the clearest, and it was great, right? But most of the time that I remember my dad, he was always a bit drunk. Or even if he hadn't had a drink for a few days, he seemed like he still had it in his system kind of thing.
That's crazy.
So but I also knew my mom was a kind of a wild child for many years, and so she hung out with a lot of guys that were always kind of drinking. So there's always just alcohol around.
Is your mom still alive?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And she's single, guys, by the way. But
just got awkward.
But anyhow, I remember so often going to adults when the eyes had kind of glassed over a little bit, and they were kind of, they were tipsy. They were getting a buzz on, and it just wasn't the same. As a kid, I didn't have the confidence that I was speaking and surrounded by someone who was still in charge, basically.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have been able to put it that way as a kid, but as an adult, I kind of realized that was the issue. It caused anxiety as a kid because you want your world to be in order, you want things to be safe.
Safe, yeah.
And if you're going to your mom or to your dad, and you never know when mom or dad might not be in the best state of mind to be able to make a rational decision, that's a scary thing.
Were you ever in a situation where you had to parent your parents because of their drunkenness?
That's a good question.
Like you had to get your dad in bed, or
no? I wasn't. No.
You didn't live with your dad growing up, did you?
No, I just visited occasionally.
Okay.
And usually there were some aunts, uncles, or grandparents, usually grandparents involved that would, before my dad got too drunk, would kind of take me away, or I'd go stay with my grandparents on my mom's side or something like that. So
okay,
there was a sort of an escape there, but there were many times where I'd come in and I'd see, a bloody doorpost where my dad had fallen and hit his head, or, he's passed out on the bed, not waking up, because he's so out of it. So I had those things, but no, there wasn't like where I had to clean vomit up or anything like that.
That's the worst.
Yeah.
I arrested a guy one time he was so drunk, and he had just puked all over his own hands.
Jeez.
And that's where the handcuffs go.
Yeah.
And
really? Thanks for letting us know that.
No, I'm just like, I still remember like having to, and he was starting to he wanted to fight.
Yeah.
And I remember not having enough time to get my gloves on before I put him in handcuffs. And it was just disgusting.
Golly. And you were like, don't hit me with those nasty puke hands.
He wasn't really in any shape to be swinging, but
okay.
he was trying to run, and he was going to get hurt if I let him run because he was going to fall down and hit his head or something like that. So, yeah, but vomit's disgusting. It's what's worse, vomit or poop?
Oh, vomit, I think. Because everybody smells.
You poop every day.
Yeah.
You don't vomit every day.
I don't, but I mean, you
unless
should.
you're a model.
Red Bull and cigarettes.
Sorry, hijack. I did have a girl poop in the backseat of my police car one time too.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
That's nasty.
It's terrible. Anywho,
do you have to clean that out?
It's so police cars have like a vinyl seat that comes out. So I literally just took the seat out, leaned it up against the wall, and sprayed it with a hose.
Wow.
And put it back in, and said, "There's
probably not OSHA compliant, but okay."
Well, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in law enforcement that OSHA would crap about. Anywho, trying to think anything else on alcohol. Did you know that like different alcohols have different effects on people?
No.
Okay.
When you say different alcohols, you mean like there's actually different type of...
Well, liquor versus beer versus wine versus... I don't know where you got rubbing alcohol. But yeah, it's I've made really catastrophically bad decisions on liquor that I never would have made on beer. And some people might say vice versa, but yeah, there's different effects depending on what type of alcohol you're consuming.
Right.
So I felt really bad like last Christmas. We went up to my uncle's cabin, and we were having a great family time. There was like 50 people there. It was awesome. We were shooting stuff with tannerite off the balcony, nice. And like we literally cut down trees with tannerite.
Awesome.
Like we drilled a hole in the tree, packed it with tannerite, and then shot it, and the tree like literally fell down. Like, this is the way lumberjacks should do this. But anyhow, OSHA might have a problem with that too. But like there was just so much alcohol, and I'm like, we are all a family of believers. Yeah. Celebrating the birth of our Savior, and we're getting blitzed.
Yeah,
that's not right.
No,
that did not like. I enjoyed it at the time, But then I felt really bad about it. Like my kids were there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking like beat your wife blitzed, but just not, I don't know. I try to live my life in a way that brings glory to God, and that did not bring any glory to God. There was about a 12-hour period where there was no glory for the Lord in my actions and deeds.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We've had a couple of small groups, care groups, community groups, whatever they're called, basically church gatherings that are not outside of church. Everybody's kind of got their own version of it. But basically a group of people from the church get together at somebody's house and that kind of stuff. And we've been to some that have been pretty lax, and they're kind of like, hey, we're just going to get together and eat. No big deal. Nothing big to talk about. If you guys want to bring a beer, right?
Yeah.
And this happened probably 3 or 4 times until it had to get cut off.
Really?
Because people and they weren't very many beers into it, right?
Yeah, they're lightweights.
They're lightweights. And they're, the wives are getting really chatty, a little bit touchy. Some of the guys are, just chuckling and having a good time, but it's obviously like this has gone from being a fellowship of believers to kind of like what you're saying, just like a party of people getting blitzed. And it's usually just certain people who can't handle it. I'm not saying they're alcoholics, they just can't handle it, lightweights, whatever you want to call them. And we had to cut it off. And so I think you got to ask that question, when you're having a get-together, you got to ask the question, what's alcohol's purpose here? What's the best thing that could happen with it, being involved? What's the worst thing that could happen with it being involved? And if you know that things tend to kind of go down the path, or there's more potential for it to go towards the people having too much to drink and not honoring themselves, their bodies, God, the event, whatever the case is, then you just don't need to have it. You just need to say, guys, it doesn't need to be here. And I find it's one of the things that's disturbing to me is that I don't know if this is everywhere. I don't know if it's an American thing or not is what I'm trying to say. But there seems to be a prevailing American attitude of we can't have a good time unless alcohol is involved.
That's literally the exact same statement my wife made not long ago.
Yeah.
It's ironic.
Everywhere I go, it's, people, hey, they show up to a party, where's the beer at? Where can I get a drink?
Yeah.
It's not like, hey, guys, how's it going? Let's talk for a little bit, catch up. It's, let me get a beer in my hand, get that down, and then, then
I show up to a party and I say, where's the cake at?
Where's the cake?
Where's the cake? But yeah, that's very true. And I wonder, like, I'm not a very big world traveler. I think it depends on the country. Like, you go to Mexico.
Yeah.
I've been there.
Okay.
Beer's flowing.
Yeah.
As long as you got a $5 bill out, ready to hand it to the bartender, it's flowing anyhow. And I've been to Canada several times. They like their beer.
Yeah.
And Jamaica. Those are the 3 countries I've traveled to. Isn't that sad? In Jamaica, there was, of course, there was a bunch of Americans at a resort in Jamaica.
Yeah,
so
it's kind of hard. Being an American anywhere, it's kind of like, oh, Americans have money. We're gonna give them.
You're getting the American version of
American
what
treatment.
paradise is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Except for Canada. That's never paradise.
Sorry, Canada.
Sorry, Canada. Actually, like Vancouver looks pretty legit, but whatever.
So, I guess that's the question, though. Is, you think about alcohol as sort of a fire. Use it wisely. Maybe don't use it at all.
Is that your Indian blood talking? Firewater.
Hey, firewater.
Yeah.
So that's, you just got to be careful with it, guys. And I would always lean towards the side of stay away from it, really.
Yeah.
For my own
Honestly, I would too.
Yeah. If you had to make a decision of whether I'm going to drink, not drink, don't drink. And,
if it's a question, can I control this? The answer is probably no. Like, if you can't just come up with that answer immediately, the answer is probably no.
Okay. That's good. I think that's good. And we'll probably end it there with the alcohol segment. All right, let's jump over to unemployment. Do you need to get a drink or anything?
I've got water, ice water.
Water. I got tea, so we're good. Yeah. All right, so unemployment is the other question. All right, how does a guy deal with unemployment? And I've known guys that have been unemployed from their own stupidity. I've known, which is very bad, to come home and say, I screwed up and I got fired. I've known people who get the package at work and they think everything's going to work out and they're going to go find another job next week or next month, but they don't. And
You're talking about a severance package?
Yeah, severance package. And they think, oh, this is going to be great. And they're out there on the market for a year and a half, never found anything. I know people who've been hunting for 2 years or more. And so let's talk about unemployment and kind of how to deal with it when it happens. I'm thinking about it more in my mind from a perspective of self-esteem. How do you think about yourself? But then also what's the opportunities that it presents as well?
Okay. I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is you may not be as valuable as you perceive yourself to be.
That's good.
And you should never not take something because you think it's below you.
Yeah.
If McDonald's is all you can get, then McDonald's is where you go to work and you build from there.
That's good.
And if you have a job and you're not happy with it, you now have 2 jobs. Your first job is your 9 to 5 at the job that you don't like, and your second job is searching for another job.
Yep.
And looking for a job is work, man. I mean, it takes a lot of work. And the days of having a good resume and submitting an application, from my experience, are over.
Yeah.
You have to know somebody on the inside.
Yep.
You have to network on LinkedIn and go meet people and do coffee and all this stuff that I know I didn't want to do. But, I'm a guy that has had exactly one corporate job, but that's how I got it. There's a guy I met at a birthday party when I was still a cop. Mm-hmm. I was like, it was a little kid's birthday party. And I think there was alcohol involved.
Little kid's party.
I'm just kidding.
And cake probably, right?
There's definitely cake involved. Come on. And I met him, and he's an ex-police officer, and he worked in banking. And I was like, oh, what are you doing? And he started talking to me about it. And I was like, that's twice as much money as I'm making. First of all, that was the first thing that got my attention.
Yeah.
And then the schedule and things. But anyhow, but I wasn't just going to birthday parties and randomly bumping into people. I went to networking events. There's a career transition program in the town near where I lived that's put on by a guy that spent 40 years in the HR industry. It's his ministry.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of freaking work to find work.
Yeah.
And you don't get paid for it. But that's the way it works.
Yeah.
Now, there are certain industries where if you get into them, get experience and stuff like that, you'll start getting recruited. Like if you're in the industry that I was in, I get an email 2 or 3 times a week. Hey, we got this position. We got that. I'm like, yeah, no thanks.
Yeah. No, I still get emails for software development and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And which is nice to know that's hanging out there in case I ever want to go back to it. Yeah. But I don't do that anymore, people. So that's good. And I think you're absolutely right. You got to take the employment stuff seriously, and it's going to be different, especially if you had a career that was 10, 15 years long and then you got laid off and now you're so much years older.
Yeah.
The market looks different, and you got to figure out what that market looks like, what people are looking for, and how to appeal as a person with your background with maybe outdated skills to the new crowd. And
it depends on the market, too. Having 10, 15 years of experience might be good in some industries, and it might actually be a hindrance in other industries. Sure. And you have to know that industry and know what they're looking for. Like there's so many things that could be done that I think people don't do. And believe me, guys, I am guilty of this because it's my MO to half-ass things. I mean, it's just how I operate, and I'm trying to slay that dragon within myself. Word. But the question I ask myself at the end of every day is, did I do everything I possibly could have to get to the goals that I've set for myself?
That's good.
And I think, too, set a goal. Set a goal. Goals are specific, they are achievable, and they are time-bound. So if I was looking for a job, I would say, I need a job making $75,000 a year by December 1st. Come hell or high water, that's my goal. And get after it. Do everything you can. If you don't have a job and you have a wife and kids and you are spending 12 or 15 hours a day looking for a job, your wife's going to be okay with that. That's an okay thing to do. When you get the job and you're starting to put those hours in and stuff like that, then you get into, well, this is not temporary. This is permanent. This could become a problem. But yeah, I think we as humans, we are the only species. Anyhow, creation versus evolution. Here we go.
Are we a species?
We are the only organism on the face of this planet that does less than we are absolutely capable of doing.
Yeah.
Trees grow as tall as they can. bears eat as much as they can before they hibernate, and human beings do a little bit and then go watch TV.
Yeah. Oh, a couch.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. There's my nappy time.
So I think that's really good practical stuff. Let's jump over to the side of how it hits a guy when he gets unemployed, and especially if he's been unemployed for a while. So I think this is a real challenge for us men, but especially because not only do we feel the pressure to provide, we identify so much with what we do, that becomes a big part of our identity. It's kind of redundant, but when we show up at a party,
what's the first thing you ask to do?
First thing you ask, hey, what do you do? And then for the guy who says, well, I'm kind of in between things right now. Which is basically like, I don't have a job. Yeah. But that's a bad feeling, right? Guys want to be doing a thing. We want to be setting the world in order in some kind of way.
Yeah.
And if we don't have a job, it's difficult. It's tough on us. So, I think one of the things you got to do is you got to separate yourself from your job and what it is that you do, right? You got to find value in yourself apart from the thing itself, right? I mean, we're all beholden to the economies as they are today, meaning you're either going to be self-employed or you're going to work for somebody else, but you got to have money coming from someplace. And, most people who are not self-employed, who don't have a business, you have less control over your direction of how often you're going to be employed and when you're going to get let go and that kind of stuff. So, you got to understand that your unemployment situation may not be your fault. It may be your fault, but it's probably not your fault in most cases. And not only that, but it doesn't define you as a man. It just means that now you've got to figure out how to work this system. You've got a new problem to solve, and the thing that you're doing is getting employed. That's what you're all about.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're less of a man because you don't have a job. It just means that you're trying to figure that thing out.
Yeah, mindset is so huge. And when you wake up 20 days in a row, 30 days in a row, and you're still unemployed, it's very easy to get sucked into a slump. It's very easy to want to give up and start drinking or, other self-destructive behaviors instead of looking for a job. I feel like our universe is organized in a way that we are going to be tested. And the way that you respond to things is your test. And if you wake up in a sucky situation every day for a couple of months, how you respond to that is a test. And I don't know, you've got to do things first thing in the morning to get your mind right to start that search.
Yeah.
Read whatever you believe in. Have affirmations. If you wake up in the morning and say, I will submit 10 applications for employment today, and you say that over and over and over again, or whatever it is, I will be gainfully employed in 1 month. I will be gainfully employed in 1 month.
Yeah.
It sounds weird. It sounds new agey. It sounds hokey, whatever. Give it a shot and tell me it doesn't make a difference. Mm-hmm. Try it out.
Yep.
I've got a route that I walk in town that if I'm going to go do affirmations or have a prayer walk or whatever I'm going to do, and there's never anybody out there at nighttime, and I almost shout my affirmations or my things that I'm trying to accomplish, and it's been a pretty rough season for me, so. But it does make a difference.
For everybody else that wants to walk out there, they just hear some crazy guys shouting.
I don't care.
Jesus.
Not the first time I've been a crazy guy.
That's probably why there's nobody out there with you.
Yeah, they all get scared off.
So I think that's absolutely right. But there's opportunities there too when you're unemployed, because now you got all this time on your hands. And I've known a lot of guys who are like, man, I'm losing weight. I'm figuring out what I want to do with my life.
Yeah.
I'm starting to get some clarity as to do I want to be a career guy? Do I want to do my own business? Do I want to, do I want to work for a big company? Do I want to work for a small company?
Yeah.
Questions that they never had time to ask before. They finally got time to do that.
Yeah.
So there's opportunity, and you got to take advantage of that.
Absolutely. I mean, I got to lay in a hospital bed for 19 days and lay in a recliner at my house for another 2 months this summer.
Yep.
And that was an amazing time of reflection, reassessing, thinking about, okay, what's really the long-term picture? Plus, Grey's Anatomy's on Netflix, and
oh, geez.
Oh, my gosh. Anyhow, so much Grey's Anatomy. And this is what happened when you don't send me the questions ahead of time, by the way. I'm riffing right now. Anyhow. Yeah, it's good to reflect. It's good to think and plan and think about the future. But you know what? I tend in the direction of doing that too much and not doing what needs to be done today.
Yeah.
I actually wrote a speech when I was in Toastmasters about the 3 most influential men in my life. And here's the gist. My granddad grew up during the Depression, and he always spent time in fear of lack, in fear of, not having enough. My dad was a ultra hippie pothead and a dreamer, and he always spent time in the future thinking about what could I do, where, what's next, what am I going to do in 6 months, another year, whatever. And neither my granddad or my dad accomplished anything. Then there's my uncle. My uncle is hands down, far and away, the wealthiest person I know. He's got, I think, 86 acres lakefront here in North Carolina.
Jeez.
I think I counted 11 cars. Like, dude's well off.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed about him is he focuses on what can I do today? What needs to be done this day to make this day better? And it's paid off for him.
Yeah.
Now, he found his calling. He found what he's good at early in life, but he's one of those people that's just kind of good at everything. I love him and I want to punch him at the same time.
Well, everybody's got fears and dreams that never made a nickel, right? It's always action. That makes it happen. So you got, and the thing is, the guys, I can almost guarantee your dad's ideas and dreams would be better than your uncle's ideas and dreams. If you're just to talk about what could be, I mean, there are people who can outdream me any day.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's the guy who actually takes actions on those things and puts something, into production, right? Yeah. And doesn't just allow it to stay as dreams. So that's really good. And when you're talking about your granddad, that actually kind of helped me think of a point that I want to bring up here on this topic, which is you can actually be doing things right now to prepare for unemployment. So if you're the kind of guy who's just cushy, happy in his job and has been doing the same thing for the last 10 or 15 years, and you're supporting like an outdated system, or you're working on low tech, or you're doing things, for an old company in old ways, whatever the case is, and you're not growing in your career in some kind of way, you're not helping yourself out for when the day comes that you're unemployed. Because when the day comes that they give you that package and you've got 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 more years to retirement, and you know that you've got to get a job, you've not done yourself any favors. So you need to have some kind of a sense of fear that, man, if the shoe drops here, is that a saying, the shoe drops?
If the shoe fits is a saying, the other shoe drops. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Okay. Yes.
If a shoe of some sort, a boot falls down off of something.
Some sort of footwear.
There's a footwear happening. If the footwear doesn't work out, you've got to be in a position.
This is terrible.
This is awful. We should rehearse this. You've got to be in a position where your skills are actually valuable to the market. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself trying to play catch up and not really doing a very good job of it while you're unemployed. Because, the guy who comes into my office and says, hey, I'm looking for a job and I've been doing what you're looking for the last 6 months or 6 years, practically hands-on doing this, oh, that guy's got a job as long as he fits the other requirements.
Yeah.
But the guy who says, I've been studying about it while I've been unemployed is not really impressing me too much. And you got to understand there are a couple of things that are always going to be in demand. That's leadership. That's the ability to manage people, projects, and things of that nature. And so, in a history of innovations and accomplishments and things of that nature. So, if you got to have something that actually makes you employable beyond just you got lucky, you happened to land your last job and keep it for the last 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, and to the college students and recent college graduates, I hate to break it to you guys, but the truth is nobody is impressed by a piece of paper.
Right.
Having experience is what counts. So take the lower paying job, take the entry level position that you feel like you're too good for, and fight like hell to climb within that organization. And then once you've been promoted a few times, you can do your job hopping and stuff like that and really increase your marketability.
Yeah.
Because I used to interview and hire people at an older position, and I would see these kids coming in fresh out of college and had never had a job and just almost demanding
big money,
almost as much as I made. I'm like, no, son, that's not how it works. We start and then we build and grow.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's don't overvalue yourself. That's not don't overvalue yourself, but don't overestimate your value to the marketplace.
Exactly.
How about that? Does that sound a little nicer?
That sounds good.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Character is always in demand, and you can tell it as soon as somebody comes in the door. So that's another thing when you show up, you got to be the gentleman. You've got to be honest. Don't try to BS your way through some questions when you're getting interviewed, that kind of stuff. Guys, be a man of integrity.
Get some interviewing skills.
Yeah.
Prepare for the
mock
interview.
Interviews.
If they ask you, do you have any questions? They're expecting you to ask questions, and if you don't, you look disinterested.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Preparation is key.
Yeah.
Know a little bit about the company. Research the people that are going to be interviewing you on LinkedIn. Everybody's information is out there. It's available.
Yep.
And if you can't find us, say, I tried to find you on LinkedIn, but apparently you're a little more private than most people.
That's a nice way to cover
that. Might be.
That's a nice way of saying.
As long as you don't look like a creepy psycho stalker, I guess. Know thyself.
Yeah. I tried to find you on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and then
Instagram, Snapchat.
And dropped by your house a few times.
Yeah. Sorry about the bushes.
All right, guys. I think that's good for the unemployment piece. Look, I really hope you guys are getting something out of these Ask a Man interviews or not interviews, Ask a Man episodes. And look, if you guys have questions, and I know you do, send them over to wolfandiron.com/askaman. There's a form on there you can just fill out and send a question over to me. Or you can send a question to askaman@wolfandiron.com, and we'll get those emails. We'll check them out. And hopefully if you make the cut, we'll answer those questions here on the show. Thank you guys for being a part of this. Thanks, Brandon, for showing up again. Also, I wanted to ask, what did you think about the intro music that I've been doing? The little
killer. I like it.
You like that?
Yeah.
I was thinking we're kind of like a Starsky and Hutch kind of thing happening here. That's the vibe that I want to give off.
Wow. You've got the mustache. Which one does that make you?
I don't know.